And here we go. Let's broadcast. Okay. Let's see what we've got going on. All right. For my first person on, hi, Michael. Can you give me a heads up? Hi, Allison, Tina. Give me a thumbs up, you guys, or yes, you can hear me. Let's do our usual sound check. Hi, Christy. Oh, you guys got my message that I said you guys need to be here. There we go. There we go. Hi, Peggy. Okay, now it's coming too fast for me to keep up. So can you guys hear me okay? Throw a chat, a message in the chat and just say, yes, all good. And then we'll do a proper introduction. Thank you, Solange. Okay, I love her name, and she's got the cutest, she's just precious. Her hair is just, every time I see her come on, she makes me happy. Of course, everybody does too, but there's something endearing about Solange. Okay, so today, you guys, this is a super important topic. You guys know how much I love all of you and how important the topic of mindset is, but I'm not the expert in this. I've only done my own work. So today, we're bringing Jessica to you, and she is a mindset coach for high-achieving entrepreneurs who are ready to create the money and success of their own definition. I love that. She knows firsthand what happens when you focus on creating success from the inside out and helps go-getters take action towards their big dreams in a way that doesn't sacrifice their values, health, or sanity. Amen to all of it. Now, I'm gonna keep our little points of talking to the side here so you see me reading a little bit. Reminding everyone, if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A. I'll be monitoring that later on. The chat is just a nice place for you guys to kind of tell us about yourselves, tell us what your mindset issues are, and I'll be looking at that as well. But we're really just going to have an organic conversation today, and I just want to give you a big welcome, Jessica. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I love opportunities like this to chat with people.
Yeah, so tell us about your mindset issue. How did you even get into this? How did this become a topic? How did you become an expert at this?
So I was my own first student. I went to corporate, like you're supposed to after school. And I think I knew, but probably 2 days in, that I was not cut out for it. But I stuck with it for 5 years. And that whole time I was trying to entrepreneur. I was trying to figure out what my thing should be. And I was trying to figure out how to make money. And eventually started like buying courses, and I lived with podcasts in my ears. I read all the books, like I knew all the things, right? There was no plausible reason why I shouldn't have been able to have a successful business. And so eventually when I got sick of spending all my money and not getting anything in return, and more so just like feeling like, seriously, what the heck is wrong with me? Like, why isn't this working? Right? I was historically like the smart person at school and all those things, right? So I should have been successful. I kind of came to the realization, like it's probably you.
Yeah.
And so the first person I hired was a mindset coach. And we just worked on all these types of things for myself first. And a few months into us working together, she started saying to me, I really think you could do this, which I was really against at first. I was like, no, really, like I'm coming to you because I have lots of issues, right? And I was very resistant to it. At the time, I was just side hustling copywriting because that's what I had done kind of in corporate. But I ended up pivoting because on my copywriting consults, I would talk to people about their mindset issues. Like, why don't you want to list who it is you actually want to work with? Why do you not feel ready to charge the rates you really need to be charging? Why are you not sharing this on your Facebook wall, even though your mom is going to see it? Why do you feel like you have to make money this quickly because otherwise your partner is going to be disappointed? Like all these things. I was working through that with people in the process of trying to write their websites, and very quickly realized, this isn't about the writing of the website anymore. Like what I really enjoy is this meat and figuring out what is keeping people stuck, just the way I was stuck for 5+ years. So that's kind of my background and how I got into this. Since then, that has been my zone of genius, is taking people who are really stuck, who have been trying to create a result for themselves, who are seeing a plateau, and help them break out of that. Because every plateau is at its core a mindset issue.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, 100% agree. I mean, you can have all the bricks in place for a firm foundation, right? And you won't build, you're not going to build the house if your mind is holding you back, period.
Yep.
I mean, you can have everything you need, but if you've got something in here that thinks you're not worthy or thinks you don't deserve it or it's not possible. So tell me give us the big aha for you that your coach actually helped you shift. Like for me, I know what mine are because the light bulb is really bright when it turns on. I'm like, oh my gosh, you feel that thing that washes over you, that realization that says, I'm the one that's been stopping me from doing this. You can go two ways. You can go, yes, I agree, that's it. Or you can say, no, that's not me, I don't have a problem. So so if we say, yes, you're right, tell me what yours was. What was the moment that you realized, she hit it, she got it?
Actually, I think it came before I hired her, and that's probably what made me hire her. Was I was listening to David Nagel. I was on a road trip by myself and had David Nagel in my ears, and he said, "If you want to change your life, you have to change your life." And it's so obvious, right? The things like mindset work is often so logical. People hear something and they're like, "Yeah, oh yeah, obviously, yeah, that makes sense, of course."
Yes.
But for some reason, when he said that, I realized that I had been trying to change all of the things outside of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been trying to just gather more information just in case it would someday come in handy. But I wasn't really changing me and how I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard that, I turned everything off. I stopped very abruptly. I turned off all the podcasts. I unsubscribed from 300 newsletters. I stopped buying all the things, and
listen up, guys. Listen up to this right here! Exclamation point. Go ahead. Keep on.
I turned everything off, and it was so surreal and also deeply uncomfortable. Because I realized that for all this time I had been using educating myself as a way to ignore what was going on the inside and how uncomfortable I was with my lack of results. And I kept thinking I could learn my way through it. And that wasn't going to happen.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So for this early in, we're hitting on the biggest pain point. It's in almost all of my copy. It's in all the things I say to my coaches when they say, what certification should I get yet next? What class should I take? What should this? Do you have a successful practice? Not yet. Then why do you keep trying to learn more? Right. Pull back, figure it out. What's going on that's keeping you from being successful? It's got to be inside. And you just said, it's so basic. People say all the time, stop doing what doesn't work. And you're like, okay. And then we keep doing what doesn't work.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So when we hear that and we agree with it, why don't we go inside and dig around besides the discomfort? Is it because we don't know how, we don't have the skill, or is it the discomfort? I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable. My whole life is uncomfortable right now.
That alone is a skill, though, mm-hmm. to learn to be comfortable in where it is you still need to grow. And I think that is one of the first things that people have to learn. And I think some of that comes from, we think that we should be somewhere where we're not. We're uncomfortable with where it is we're starting. So there are people who can't get themselves to do the things that they know would be good for them, whether that is in business or eating well or exercising or making your bed every day or whatever. I don't care. There are people who can't get themselves to do those kinds of things, but even though they know that, they try to pretend that they're already in a place where they could take consistent action on something and where they could implement and where they could use certain strategies that would help them move forward, but you're not even there yet. And so sometimes people, I see this a lot, we think that just because we've made more trips around the sun, we've learned more. And you may have to be okay with the fact that you're starting at a place where you think that you should have been when you were 15, right? And there cannot be any shame around that, right? So it's twofold. Being okay with where it is you're starting right now and not feeling any shame, embarrassment, guilt, whatever, right? I would much rather somebody say, you know what? I'm really terrible at this. This is something I'm still learning. Here's something I was never taught. I need help with this. I now feel like an 8-year-old, but can you help me? Right?
Yes.
And I would rather that than pretending that we're ready for some kind of step that you haven't gotten your head to yet.
Okay. This makes so much sense to me. I'm taking notes if you see me looking down. So because it, it all resonates. So let's find the origin of that. Is it because people feel low self-worth? Is it because they were traumatized as children to believe that they're not worthy of success? Is it because we worry too much about what other people think of us that we're unwilling to admit that we don't know, or that we aren't comfortable saying, well, I don't know that yet. So, or what is it that causes that?
I think it's some of all of those things, but I think at its core, it is like a worthiness issue, right? It's more like what made that happen to you. Some people were bullied in school. Some people had a narcissistic parent. Some people had their own struggles with substance abuse or eating disorders or whatever, right? Where that idea came from for you, for some people, it's just deeply steeped into their family. And it's not even that like one particular thing happened to you or not, but it's just kind of part of the culture that you grow up in, right?
Okay.
But at its core, it is that I don't think I either can or deserve to change what it is that isn't working for me right now.
Okay. So very, very seldom, and it's a question, but also kind of a statement, and tell me if I'm wrong. Very seldom is it that we aren't given the tools. The tools are everywhere. All you have to do is Google. I mean,
you have Google.
Yeah. I mean, thank God for Google, so we can all pretend we act like we know what we're doing. But yeah. So it's not that we don't have the tools. It's not that we don't have the knowledge or the skills. And let's kind of even focus this in tighter on health coaches. I tell them all the time, you know enough, you have enough information. You are smart enough. You've been around the sun, like you said, 1,000 times more on this topic. So how hard can it really be to just kind of step back from all of that and take a really solid, honest look at yourself and say, this is where it's happening? I mean, I want to say so many times, turn around, look in the mirror, this is where it is. How do we get people to do that? So give us some easy steps on how we can even begin that transformation process.
Okay, so I think some of it is finding a way, whether that's journaling, finding a partner, a coach, a person who you feel like you can be completely honest with. Because what I find a lot of people doing is intellectualizing their emotions. And what I mean by that is somebody will say like, well, I feel bad about this, but I shouldn't because of this thing. So we know what the logical answer is. I had somebody, this just happened this morning. Her husband is a physician. She was an attorney. They have plenty of money. It's not a concern for them. And she was feeling some scarcity around money. And she wrote out a sentence and said, I'm feeling like I don't have enough money, which is crazy because obviously that's not true. And I stopped her and I was like, no, but you can't say, which is crazy because I know that's not true, because you are feeling a thing. And
right.
To try to rationalize that is to ignore what is right now a real fear for you. Now, I'm not saying that the fear is founded or that you want to stay that way or whatever, but to keep pretending that something shouldn't be a problem, that you shouldn't be feeling something you're feeling, that you shouldn't be triggered by what you're triggered by, whatever, is to ignore the current state of where your head is at. Because if it is a fear going on in your head, it is running the show somewhere.
Right. Right. And don't you think that it's really, we tend to be really hard on ourselves by saying, when you just said that, but that's crazy, that's a judgment on yourself.
Yes.
You're basically saying you're crazy,
yes.
Which then makes it worse, because then really do you want to turn around and look at the real problem, because now you've labeled yourself.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that can make it hard. So how did you work her through that?
So in this case, it was a matter of showing her like, okay, here you are intellectualizing, right? You are trying to rationalize away your feelings. And the first thing is like, can you just sit with the uncomfortableness of your feelings?
Mm-hmm.
Because so many of us, I think this was common in parenting back when anybody who's on this was growing up, where parents would like, I heard a lot, big girls don't cry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other people would hear things like, oh, it'll be okay, or you're fine, or whatever, right? And our parents or other people we were around were uncomfortable with our painful emotions. And
Yes.
so we learned, oh, just chop it off. Just
Yes.
pretend it's not there. And so the first thing you have to do is actually let yourself feel all the feels. And if you've ever been with a kid who's really upset, and you've done this with them and you've seen what happens, the emotions peak at some point, and then you start to notice it tapering off all on its own. You don't need to talk. They don't need to talk. It just kind of happens. And then, they'll do that where they're breathing, and you can tell like the emotion is going away, and you have to do that with yourself as an adult too. You need a person, a therapist, a partner, a parent, whatever, or even just a journal that you can put it all out there and actually feel a full cycle of whatever it is you're feeling.
Oh my gosh. You're my soul sister. Okay. So backing up to this, because I remember, this brought up some stuff for when my son was a child, and he was told by a family member, you're fine. And I would have to say, listen, he's doing his thing. Let him work through it. Don't tell him he's fine just because you're uncomfortable. Move away from him if you can't handle it. Because I have always believed that if we are in the throes of a deep emotion or a deep reaction to something, and someone comes in and they try to shut it down, our body holds on to that feeling. Absolutely. Or that expression. It becomes disease. It becomes sickness, and we become unwell emotionally.
Yes.
And then we wonder why we cannot succeed, or why we can't surpass or get over things, right?
Yes.
Why are we doing that? Please stop doing that to your kids if that's what you're doing. And if it happened to you as a child, besides the journaling, like how do you suggest we get those feelings, pull them up, and then work through them, because they are affecting us as grown people in business.
Yeah, they are. So, at that point, there's a lot of ways that this can kind of happen organically. A lot of my healing later on as a young adult happened when I would be around my parents again. Because when I was around them again, they would like trigger all those buttons that I had ignored, right?
Yes.
And so even though it was terrible and really uncomfortable, now I can see where that was really good for me, because I had my husband there, and we would, they would leave for the evening, or we'd be done seeing each other, and I would process, and I would just say all the things. And there was anger, and there was sadness and regret, and all of these things that got poked again. And I'm not saying to like go actively look for those triggers. That's probably not a good plan.
No.
But
you can feel them.
But you can feel them, right? And if you bump into one, if it happens, then the question is like, okay, now can you give yourself the chance to feel all the way through that, and to acknowledge this is still something that you're working on. A forgiveness practice is huge in these types of things when you're trying to heal that type of trauma. Things like EFT and different forms of meditation can help. I think when we get to that point, it's a matter of like finding the modality that works for you.
Yes, I agree 100%. I've done almost all of them to overcome EMDR, brain spotting, neurofeedback, all of that. Yeah. Just as a reminder, you guys, if you put your questions in the Q&A, it'll be a lot easier for me to go back and find them later when we go to questions. But let me ask you this. So let me give you an example of something that happened to me, and tell me what you think about this for other people, because it works for me, but so going through a lot of things recently with marriage and getting divorced and things like that, so much started coming up.
Yes.
And so I called my mom, and I'm so blessed and lucky to have a mother who's so receptive. But I was just saying, like, you set me up for this. You nurtured me into this behavior in my own situation, which exacerbated, the problems in our marriage. And she tried to say, well, I did everything I could. And I said, nope, you don't get to go back and try to make excuses. This is my turn to release my trauma to you. And she said, you're absolutely right. I'm completely open and receptive to that. I no longer have that feeling. I was able to express myself to her. So do you think that's a positive thing, that if we can find the person that made us feel that way, if they're receptive, to be able to have that conversation?
Yes. I think, though, the key there is not having an expectation of how the person is going to respond.
Right.
Okay. So if you are going to your mom and you're like, hey, you did some pretty messed up things back in the day, and you're expecting her to be like, oh, you know what? You're right. I'm really sorry.
Mm-hmm.
That may not happen.
Right.
Right. It could be the opposite. It could be that she's like, no, actually, you were a terrible child, and I was going through some terrible things too.
And then it gets worse, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I would caution you, if you aren't at the place where you can have no expectations about it, then don't go do it. Right?
I agree.
Then go write a letter that you don't send, or go something, right? Process in some other way. But that part is crucial, because otherwise, yes, it will be more damaging to go to somebody for something that you're hoping for and then not get it.
Yeah. It's the same analogy. Like my therapist always tells me, she's like, don't go to the hardware store for bread. So, that kept sinking in my head, and I like to use that a lot, because I truly believe I knew I was going to my mom, knowing I knew how she would be, she'd be receptive. So, but going somewhere for something that you cannot get from someone else is just going to cause pain to get deeper.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about how this is affecting us in our business. Let's say, let's go to the mindset of money mindset. Let's talk about money mindset for a minute. We're going to shift this upside down, because it is one of the biggest things I see coaches having problems with. They don't think they can make money in this business. Yes, you can. They don't think they're worthy of the money when it actually starts to come their way. So they sabotage themselves by not responding to client requests.
Yep.
And then they wonder why they don't have a successful business. So can you tell us where some of these money mindset issues come from, and how we might go about resolving some of that?
Okay. That's, a few webinars worth of a topic.
I know it is. But let's just do the basics.
Okay. So yes to the unworthiness piece. That's deeply related to some of the things we've already been talking about. Some of it, one of the big things that I see is like that it has to be hard. And whether that means that you would feel bad for making however much money you're trying to make when your dad only made X number of dollars, whether you feel like you're not working because you sit by a computer and your grandpa busted his butt in a factory job, right? And barely had money to feed the family, whatever. We have all these stories about how hard something needs to be and how hard it needs to be in order for us to earn it.
Okay.
So that's something I see come up a lot for people. Another thing, you were talking about like when we sabotage, like we don't get back to clients. That often comes from a few places. One, you don't trust yourself to be able to deliver for that person in a way that you would find adequate. Two, you would not be your own client, and so you don't understand why somebody would hire you.
Okay.
This is your zone of genius, right?
Yeah,
so
right. Yes.
Most likely you wouldn't hire somebody, or not to the degree that you are trying to help people. Or three, you are scared of what your ability to handle the money, the time, the energy that would require, right? So you may not trust yourself to stay lovingly committed to your partner if you suddenly make 3 or 4 times more than him or her. You may feel like if all your time goes to your kids, then you're not going to be a good parent anymore. You may feel like you don't have enough energy to dedicate to 10 clients at once, and then you can't serve them all the way that you want to. Those types of things. In some way, we don't trust our ability to keep things going in our life the way we want to and serve people in the way that we expect ourselves to.
Right. So it's kind of a matter of trusting that I think it's a big thing, whether you have a religious belief in God or whatever, the universe. I think we are relying on ourselves too much and not realizing that there's a bigger picture here that's in charge of us. And if we put our faith in whatever that may be for whoever you are, right? The universe or whatever, we're not here. No man is an island, right? We're being watched over and taken care of. But I think that if we don't start to trust outside of ourselves, we're never going to see success.
Right.
Like me trusting you, bringing you into my people.
Right.
My people trusting me to bring you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, I think there's a lack of trust in the world around us that also keeps us from believing that we can be successful.
Yes. And trusting that like that is, you are not going to run out of inspiration. You are not going to run out of the resources that you need to help people, right? Because if you are committed to the process of serving your clients, then you will, if you don't know the answer now, you'll go get it.
Right. Yeah. And it's out there.
Yes.
Right. I mean, hello again, Google, like we will never run out of information. Absolutely. No. Okay. So, the people that you work with the most, what's the biggest mindset issue you see the most of?
The pretending that you're starting somewhere where you aren't is huge. And that one is tough because it's hard to see that on your own.
Okay.
Right? Until somebody is showing you, no, here's what you are not doing. I often interrupt clients mid-sentence. I'm like, no, wait, you just did it.
Yep. Yeah.
And then there are a few other big shifts that I see. Early entrepreneurs often lack the trust and confidence that they can actually change their life themselves. They are looking for something outside of them to change their life. If I take this course, then I'll know what I need to do. If I hire this coach, then I'll be okay. If I hire this VA, then I'll have time for my life. And all of those things could be true, but if you aren't the one driving it and you aren't driving your own growth and you're expecting to just be able to pay money to get yourself somewhere where you want to go, that's not how that works.
No.
And then the other one that I see a lot is when people rush too quickly to solve things, to fix a problem. Like, yeah, okay, fine, but what do I do about it? Right? You get so caught up in like okay, how do I make this go away? I have a gross feeling. I want to get rid of it, right? Just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And like we were talking about at the beginning, some of the beginning work is becoming non-judgmentally aware of where you are and what's going on for you first.
Right. And that requires being absolutely 100% present in your life. And just from my own experience, and I always like to share my experience, and some of them are, my stories are pretty, I've got, my mistakes are other people's blessings. I truly believe that because I put my stuff out there personally and in my business because I feel like when something happens to me, I have to share that with people so they can learn from it. And I remember feeling like the ick factor over something. It was, it was probably about 5 years ago, sitting at my computer. It was about money. It was about spending money. And I was just like very uncomfortable. The anxiety bubbling up inside, the nervousness about hitting go on this program I was going to buy, that was going to serve me. I knew it was what I needed.
Yep.
And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to sit with this for just a minute. Is this a real feeling? Or am I making it bigger than it really is? And boy, was I building it. I had a whole story going on in my head about, well, when you spend that, this is what you're going to have to do without. This is how long it's going to take to pay it back. What if you don't? So I think that we can create those stories, don't you?
Yes.
That we can make things so much worse instead of saying, this doesn't feel good. I know I need it. Let's move through it. And then we're just going to do it and we're going to make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people need help with is understanding the difference between something not being right for you and something just being uncomfortable. So growth is often uncomfortable.
Yes.
I had growing pains as a kid in the back of my knees all the time, but that was still a good thing. I was growing. So it's not to say that you won't have to do scary things, but how do we know the difference between something that's not right for us, where it's really our gut being like, no, abort. This is not the right plan, as opposed to this is where I'm supposed to go. And it's just uncomfortable. It's just something I haven't done before. And now is my opportunity to grow into that. Knowing the difference between the two of those is huge.
How do you start that process? I know how I do it for myself. I think it's different everyone has a different way of feeling that, but just give us some general ideas. Like how do you know?
Yeah. So, some of it is it depends where you're starting. Some people can just feel it, right? If kind of what you were describing, if you take enough time, you take a minute, and just ask yourself, am I actually excited about this opportunity, or am I really terrified by it? Those are two different things. But also asking yourself, like, what happens if you don't do whatever the thing is? If you don't do the thing, are you afraid that something bad is going to happen? Will you think less of yourself? Will you be hard on yourself for not getting a certain result? Are you going to be extremely angry if you invest in something and don't get the result that you wanted out of it, right? When you're coming from those places, that's all fear-based motivation. That's all you being pushed by what it is you don't want, right? I don't want to be poor anymore. I'm sick of feeling like I can't hack it as an entrepreneur. I'm sick of not having enough clients. I'm sick of my partner asking me when this is going to be a viable business, whatever it is.
Yes.
And if you are being pushed by those feelings, rather than like, oh, you know what? I had one client that was amazing. I'd like to find 3 more like her. And being drawn to what it is you do want, that's a totally different energy behind it, right?
Okay.
And so when you are looking for what it is you do want out of something, and what you want is never money, people. It is never money.
No. And if it is, you're not going to get any.
No. And like, you just haven't gone deep enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, sure, I want more money too, but like, not really, because if somebody just came and gave me the house I want or the vacation I want or whatever, then I wouldn't care. So it's not about the money. But if you can pinpoint what it is you're trying to get and take action toward that thing, then you're probably all right. Then the scary thing that you're trying to do is getting you somewhere, rather than you trying to just avoid painful feelings that you don't want to happen.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, if I can just kind of break this down a little bit, is maybe we have some FOMO going on. Yes. that we are basing our feelings around that. So fear of missing out, for those of you who aren't aware of what FOMO is, we have a fear of missing out, and then the anxious feeling might come in and we make a decision based on that. And then we feel bad about the decision because we made it based on what other people think or are doing. Yes. The other thing I see, and tell me if you get this too, I sell a high dollar program to get into the Institute for Functional Health Coaching. It's $59.97. It's completely 100% worth the price tag. I have had 2 people in the last year or so since we opened their doors say that they didn't get what they wanted out of the program. Well, they never even got started on it, 10%, 12%. They didn't take their own responsibility. And I'm seeing that as well, where people will say, well, you're supposed to give me everything, but then they purchase and they don't do something with it. Then they're not taking responsibility. Do you see that as well?
Yep. And that's exactly what I meant when I was talking about, like, you're looking for something outside of you.
Yes.
To fix the problem.
Yes.
Right? Like, you guys, Carmen isn't going to get you clients. That's not how that works.
No, I'm going to cheer you on when you get them.
Right. But like, that's, again, this seems painfully obvious as I'm saying it, right? But that's on you to start to realize, like, okay, here's what I do want. I want some clients. And so now I'm going to invest in this thing that's going to show me how to do that. But a lot of people aren't even clear on what it is they want first. Not really. They'll swear up and down that they want clients, but what they're really sick of is feeling broke. What they're really sick of is something else. So that clarity around what it is you do truly, genuinely, without resistance want, and then going for that, is a great place to start.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about being influenced by other people and being influenced by the world around us, and how much we allow in to affect our mindset. And this is a good example. It could be me feeling amazing about myself, going to CrossFit today, thinking I've got all this energy, I'm fit, I feel amazing. I walk in and I see a girl who is visibly more fit and amazing than me. And the next thing I know, my mindset shifts from, maybe I'm too tired, I'll never run as fast or look as good as her. Isn't it, you know what I'm saying? So we do this in our business too. And I say, we all know comparison is a thief of joy. Yes. But it truly affects our mindsets. That's why Brendon Burchard says the last thing you should do every morning is first get on social media, because you start your day comparing yourself to others, which changes the mindset you have about yourself.
Right.
Everything about your day can change when you start out that way.
Yes.
So how do we avoid that? Because we live in a world, like, I mean, we got on like a minute before everyone else. I'm like, how cute her hair is. I'm like, oh, she's got beautiful red color. But I know I'm aware enough of myself and I'm comfortable enough with who I am. But I could have been like, oh man, she's going to rock this and I'm going to screw this up. That's daily life. How do we avoid that?
So I think the key there is to, yes, avoid it on some level, right? Don't start your morning with Facebook. That's just smart. But on the other hand, like, can you build yourself up enough that you don't, like, it's not a thing? When you start to recognize the strengths of others as something that also benefits you, that's very different. Because at its core, this comes from us putting people, skills, traits, attributes, whether that's physical or emotional or mental, on pedestals, right? When we start ranking things, that's when we get into trouble, because everybody's ranking system is different. Okay, that's the first thing. We have not agreed on a ranking system as a species, and we won't ever. So when you start ranking things, then you're always checking where it is you stack up. And this is bad either way, because if you put yourself on a very high pedestal, then you also see no worth in the people around you. You don't appreciate all the amazing things that they also have to offer. Okay. And you overinflate your worth to them, right? Because you perceive that they are also putting you on a very high pedestal,
right? Which
may not be true, right? So some of this is starting to unpedestal people, to dig in and notice first. Noticing is always first, where it is you're doing this, right? What did you hear growing up? What do you hear in advertisements? What do you see as you're scrolling your Facebook feed, right? Everybody wants a 6-figure business. Like, if you don't, woe to the person who does not have a 6-figure business. Preferably in 47 minutes while you're sleeping.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, where are you picking up these messages of what's better and worse? And from there, start to pay attention to what it is you're proud of yourself for, what it is you appreciate in others. And then kind of the 2.0 level of that is like, what can you appreciate about the downsides, what you currently perceive to be the downsides, that you can start to understand that those things that we have put down in the bottom are in some way serving you, serving the world, serving your community in some way. There's something we're learning even from the things that we perceive to be negative. And so when that kind of like helps level things out, that nothing is, insanely awesome or heinously terrible. And then it makes it easier to not compare yourself in a way that also leads to judgment. Comparison itself isn't the problem. It's the judgment we attach to it.
Totally. I agree that. And when you did this with your hands, it's a famous thing that my therapist does. She always says, if you allow it, one person's going to always be above you here. Oh, yes. Right. And then, if you perceive and your mindset isn't straight when you're with someone that's up here and they're trying to shove you down, you will drop down lower if you don't have a healthy mindset. Yes. You're never going to come up here and see the value of what they're giving you or offering you if you're constantly shoving yourself down and giving your power away. And I think sometimes I feel like I'm so aware. I feel like I'm standing in the basement and my kid's got all his Nerf guns out. And trust me when I tell you, there's a lot of them. And he's firing these bullets. That's how I feel with the awareness lately. I feel like once you open your eyes to awareness and are willing to be present, feel, and see without judgment of yourself, you then can look at others and say, I am not going to judge that. I am not going to allow that to affect my mindset. That is hugely beneficial to me. Or no, I don't need that. It's what we let in, right? That can affect us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is just, I love this topic so much. I feel like it is something that is, I think it's the key. I really, truly do. I think it's the key to success. Yes. So tell us about your toughest case. Do you have a toughest case that you're like someone who's just like, I cannot be changed. I don't believe I'm worthy. Someone that really had that moment where they're like, wow, I have a few of those in my head, but.
Honestly, my toughest cases were people who I tried to nudge into being ready. I can't make somebody be ready to change.
Right.
And so there were a few instances very early on in my practice where I believed I could help them. And I knew to be fair, I could have, right? But they were very committed to their story.
Mm-hmm.
And those were tough cases because if you don't, I said this earlier, if you don't believe in your ability to change yourself, there's not much we can do from there.
Right.
You have to start understanding that you are the thing that changes you. Everything else is just supporting you and making that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's not much that can be done. And I assume that this is also true health-wise, right? A person who is committed to being unhealthy is you can give them all the information. You can show them all the reasons why it would be amazing to be more healthy, and it won't matter.
Right. Yeah. That's why I have on my fees and services, when I start with a new client at the very last page, I always tell them, please read the last page before you reach back out, because it tells them what to expect from working with me. And if you're married to a current lifestyle and you cannot shift your mindset at all, I'm not your coach, because I'm not going to convince you. I can work with you on self-worth, but I'm not going to convince you that you're worthy of better health.
Because
you can't. And I don't have the time for that. And I honestly don't have the energy for it after hundreds of clients with those problems.
Right.
It's not going to happen. So, All right. So let's look at some questions here and let's see what people are talking about here. Claudia says, how can you not be so angry with your parents? Lately, I feel so much anger towards my mom for exposing us to an alcoholic father, shutting down emotions, not giving us attention, affection, support, and for not taking in responsibility and apologizing for it. Oh, we talked about this a little bit on our vacation together, but I want to hear your side of this too. Go for it.
So one, I have deep empathy for what you're saying.
Mm-hmm, me too.
But I want to encourage you to just be angry for a while. And maybe that means, for a while, my husband screened my phone calls. My parents would call. I always let it go to voicemail, and then he would listen to them for me. And he would either say, okay, this one's fine, and then I would listen, or he would say, I don't think you need to hear that one. And then he'd delete it, right?
Yeah.
You have to put some boundaries in place to let yourself feel that emotion in a full and complete way. And a lot of times, if you subject yourself back to them, you'll start to put up defenses again that will keep that anger from getting all the way through you. So take some time to be angry. That's okay, because you probably did live through some things that weren't right. And there were things that shouldn't have happened. I think closely related to that anger is taking the time to grieve what you wish or think should have been instead.
Yes.
And not only what it is you wish and think should have been when you were a child, but also what you think or how you think you would have turned out now if you would have grown up in different circumstances. So a lot of times what makes childhood hard is because we see how much that's impacting us now, mm-hmm. and how much we've not been able to do because of the trauma that we went through as children. And so if you can get yourself to the point where you can grieve, okay, you know what, I probably could have not landed in therapy, or not struggled with these certain things myself, or not ended up in a pattern that led to divorce or whatever. When you can get to that place where you let yourself grieve what should have been, then after all of that, you're free to start where it is you are right now. And that's when you can actually turn a new leaf and really start fresh again. But don't be too eager to rush that along, because you'll just suppress it.
Yeah. And I love the boundaries topic. Everybody that knows me well knows that I've got concrete walls dug deep down in the ground and really, really high and all the way around me now, after the experiences I've had. But let's remember this, that if we are in a situation, you guys, where we don't have someone that's receptive to hearing the pain that they put us through or whatever, maybe they're not supposed to hear it. And so a boundary for that would be, if someone comes at you and starts to say, well, I did the best I could and you weren't an easy kid, you can easily put the boundary up that says, I'm no longer accepting responsibility for what you feel I should. but
Yep.
thank you. And then you turn and you go the other way.
Yes.
Because boundaries can be super powerful in healing trauma, and helping us to overcome and get present in our lives today. And let me just throw this one more thing out there, because this is really something I'm really firmly rooted in believing, is when we have a feeling or someone triggers something in us and we feel small and we shrink in, you can see people literally become children.
Yes.
Having conversations, right? You are no longer acting from that grown-up part of yourself that knows that it was wrong for your mom to do that. You are acting as the child that wishes things could have been different. So see yourself there, get the kid out of the driver's seat, put the grown-up you there and say, you know what? I no longer have to react this way. I choose to take myself out.
Yes.
Right? Boundaries are huge for that. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. And we are so aligned. It's crazy. All right. So Anonymous asks, what if you want to move forward with the process and your spouse is opposed? I hear a boundary answer coming. Go ahead.
Some of it is as simple as like, does your partner really understand why you care? Right? I don't know who your partner is, but a lot of times when people ask this, they're hurt and confused by it because generally their partner is a kind or supportive person. And then like there's this one area where they don't get it, right? And so if that's where you're at, it may just be a matter of saying, hey, you know what? Like I really need this for me because of this. And it's not that you need to justify, but it's just helping that other person see why something matters to you.
Yeah.
If this is like on the whole, not supportive, doesn't get it, wants me to pack it in, that's a matter of, yes, better boundaries. Can you say to your partner like, hey, I need 3 hours a day. Hey, I need X number of dollars. And you transfer that to a business bank account, and then you are free to make whatever decisions you need with that money.
Right.
Whatever you need to do to make decisions for yourself, right? That don't involve asking your partner like, hey, can I sign up for this mailer, or do you think I should go with this one? Your partner doesn't care, right? Mm-hmm. Go with the boundary that will give you freedom without subjecting yourself to needing their support.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. Good answer. Okay. So let's see here. Is it important to leave emotion out of the decision-making process?
I don't think that's possible.
I agree 100%. I think that's our intuition. That's our instinct. That's what we should be feeling and listening to, right?
Yeah. And know that there is a difference, like I was talking before, about like, is this really not right for me, or is this just uncomfortable? And I my guess is that the emotions you're talking about wanting to ignore are like this is just uncomfortable and I need to push through it. But that's really different from trying to push through, what your limbic brain is screaming at you.
Right. I agree. So Natalia says, I've always relied only on myself and I don't believe in a higher power. What can I do to reduce the pressure on myself?
I think you need to understand why it is you want what you want. If you're putting pressure on yourself, it's because you have an expectation of yourself. So where does that expectation come from? Is it really yours? Right? Or did you hear a lot of things? Did you, whatever? Have you created a life for yourself where there's just inherently a lot of pressure by what it is you've already committed to? You got to dig a little bit deeper into where is that pressure coming from and understand that you get to choose that.
Yeah.
You get to choose if you stay in that type of high pressure situation and let it motivate you, or you get to start choosing to say, no, I don't actually need this. No, actually, I don't want that. No, this type of success isn't important to me. No, actually, these things are something I care about more, whatever. But pressure comes from expectations and places where we feel like we didn't or don't have a choice in the matter.
Right. Or we're trying to live up to someone else's expectation, which is it's a pressure coming from, we're creating a story. Again, a story that probably doesn't exist, that someone's like, we think someone's pressuring us and we're putting that on ourselves when really they don't even care one way or the other.
No.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Christy says, do you have some tips on stopping self-sabotage?
I have like a kind of a hard line on self-sabotage, and that it's actually always your head trying to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So one, stop buying into the idea of self-sabotage. I understand what we mean when we say that, but stop pretending that your head is against you. That's the first thing, okay? Then dig in and figure out self-sabotage is almost always competing values. So you have something that you think that you want, but where it is you are really operating from on a deep fundamental level is much more important to you than what it is you are trying to create for yourself. And so you need to look at where you think those things are in conflict and then begin to resolve that conflict, whether that's through consciously choosing some values for yourself, or again, like reprioritizing and understanding actually this thing isn't that important, or that thing can still happen. A big part of self-sabotage is starting to ask yourself, how can I? As opposed to why can't I?
Mm-hmm.
When we are in conflict, it's like, I can't have this and this. I can't have a successful business and a strong family. I can't be healthy myself and dedicate all of my time to my health coaching business, whatever. We have these stories about what doesn't work. And so the question you have to kind of obsess on is, how can I? How can I have this and this? Look for those situations where you can create, have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah. I think, I think sometimes we are so unconsciously having dialogue with ourselves.
Yes.
And I don't think we get quiet enough to actually let the real inner true self that we have answer the question. So sometimes what I will do is, if there's something I'm kind of conflicted about or I have a question about, I'll ask myself the question, and then I just sit back and wait and see what the rational answer is. I will literally, I'm not a crazy person. I'm not bipolar or anything like that. I just can hear myself dialoguing back and forth.
Yes.
And then the answer is very clear.
Yes.
But if you're not quiet and you're not present and you don't understand that you're the only one you can rely on, you're not going to hear any voices. You're just going to move forward and make decisions based on pressure or whatever, or fear or whatever. Right? Yeah. Okay. So we have, let's see here. Severine says, what about not being angry at your parents, but the opposite? I have wonderful parents, and I think unconsciously don't want to surpass them or do better than them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yes. You don't want to out-succeed your parents.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is the flip side of the same coin, right? So you may need to grieve the idea that your parents will think less of you, or that you will somehow make them pay or be uncomfortable if you surpass their current level of success. Dig into like what you think the consequences would be to them. A lot of times this type of behavior comes from us wanting to caretake other people's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh, I don't want my parents to feel bad. I don't want them to feel like they're not good enough. I don't want, like, you can hear me saying it. Here's what I don't want, right?
Yes.
But if you can start to get to the point where you, one, don't take responsibility for your wonderful parents' emotions, who would likely just be very happy for you, start paying attention to other places where you do that and figure out where it is you have decided for yourself that you have to control everybody's emotions. You have to account for all of them, and that it's on you to then make your life such that it fits for everybody else. At its core, this is actually a control issue, because we think that we can do and be whatever it is we need to do or be in order to make people feel the way we want them to feel. Your intentions are noble, but it's a control issue.
Yeah, and 100%, you guys, there's absolutely no one, no matter how you turn it upside down, flip it around, or pay for it, that you can control someone else. This is 100% the boundary thing.
Yep.
Don't try to take responsibility for your parents' response to you, because then you're relieving them of the responsibility of their own feelings. It's almost like you're stealing their ability to be proud of you and happy for you.
Yep.
Don't take that away from them by going, but I don't want them to feel this, and I don't want them to feel that, and I love them so much. No, you do your thing. Let them be responsible for how they feel. And like she said, Jessica's like right on. They're going to love that you're successful. So we've got to get out of everyone else's business and get back into our own, and allow other people to have their feelings and emotions and responses to us the way they choose to have them.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, right, we have Kay asks, what if the problem's happening now? And just briefly, spouse is against her health coaching business because of previous failures. You haven't made any money. It's not working. I'm not asking for anything. He takes care of the household, but he keeps bringing it up. She thinks there's other things holding back. She was sick for a while, tried to build a business. So this situation is completely new in my eyes due to health, commitment to helping people I was not making any money. But to him, same thing, different story. Only this time I invested $5,000.
Yeah. So one, you need to, if you are triggered by something somebody else is saying, if you're triggered by what your husband is saying, you need to find where it is you believe the kernel of truth to be in that. Unfortunately, when our partners say something like this, we don't want to, but there's some part of it that we also believe, right? So maybe you are also disappointed in the results. Again, doesn't matter that logically this time around it's different. But if you too are currently disappointed, or you too are currently being like, when is the money gonna come?
Yeah.
Then you need to first address what is the kernel of truth in what he's saying for you, so that you can take the sting out of what he's saying. Forgive yourself for what it is you are feeling, where it is you're disappointed in yourself, where it is you have embarrassment, guilt, shame, whatever the applicable negative emotion is, and deal with that part first. Learn to forgive yourself and be okay with where it is you are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go back to the boundaries piece, right? Be honest. Like, how often are you willing to talk to your partner about your business? What types of questions are okay? What types of questions are not okay? How do you need him or her to talk to you about this thing? You may need to train this person on what's okay.
Yeah. And, honestly, and I've got the question pulled up still at the same time, because there's a piece of this that, from, almost 9 years ago when I started my business, felt the same way, went through the same thing. And I think back, of course, hindsight's 2020, but, maybe part of it is for you by saying to him, can we sit down and have an honest conversation? Am I being grateful enough to you for all you've done?
Yes.
Do you see me taking responsibility and really putting my passion into what I'm about to do? Then the question comes for you. Are you really going to make this different this time? Is there a piece of you that doesn't believe it can be true? So, I think it's validation for the spouse. A lot of times they want to be validated for supporting you and honoring what you're trying to do and what they're participating in as well.
Right. But
then then also saying, listen, this time around, I'm going for it. It's going to happen. I understand you have reservations. Please try to keep some of that negative talk to yourself, because this time this is what's going to happen.
Right.
And again, like you said, firm boundaries. So I think sometimes we just need to acknowledge the people in our lives that are supporting us as we go through this journey.
Yes.
And sometimes that's enough to just kind of settle them down a little bit.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Calm down over there. It's going to happen.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So Linda says, and we're getting up on the hour, you guys. So any other questions, put them in the Q&A, please. Linda says, this is great information. I'm going through all this now, leaving a job I've been at for 30 years. At my family's company, kind of like a divorce situation, have enough money to restart. My spouse is supportive, but still stressed out. This is so helpful. I may need to grieve the divorce with extended family. I would agree with that. But also, here's the other thing I want to throw out there. And Jessica, you add too. When you are moving away from a corporate job or a job that had a guaranteed income or that you were comfortable in into something that you're passionate about, you got to give yourself some grace. There is a process in learning all of this. And if you let your mindset get in and take over until there's too much, it's overwhelming, I'm stressed, you're already starting off on the wrong foot.
Yep.
So step back and give yourself some grace and patience, right?
Yes. And be willing to admit, like, I'm a total newbie when it comes to this.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't matter. Like, you guys, a huge proportion of my clients are Ivy League graduates, PhDs, attorneys, like people who had, multiple six-figure corporate jobs, were C-suite executives. Those are my people. And like, they're making peanuts as entrepreneurs because it is a totally different skill set. And this headspace stuff, you can run away from that in corporate, because in corporate, you are paid to put a butt in a seat.
Yeah.
In entrepreneurship, it doesn't matter how much time you put in. It matters what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's not easy. You can't. And I've told my son this, he's a perfectionist, a recovering perfectionist. Cause I told him don't be like your mom, spending years trying to be perfect. But he wants to play lacrosse. And I said, I'm going to sign you up for lacrosse. And he goes, I don't know anything about it. I said, why would you? You've never played. Like, how would you know? Why would you know? There's a learning process to that. Same thing with entrepreneurship. And that's why I tell all the people that come to my school, I'm like, you are not a health coach until you're an entrepreneur. Yep. And that involves all the business pieces that gets you in a position, and mindset is one of them, of being a successful entrepreneur. Yep. That is first, you guys. Okay, we've got one more question here, and then we're going to wrap up. I used to be outgoing, quirky, and proudly called myself unique. Over the past 16 years, it seems I've taken on my husband's insecurities. For example, he worries what others will think about him or me. Therefore, I'm not supposed to joke around. It might offend someone. I know these are his issues. I need some help breaking free and getting back to being myself. Oh, I'm not going to say get divorced because that'll shove you into yourself. But go ahead, Jessica. Put that one out there.
This is kind of related to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. Like, you need to have a conversation. You need to have an honest conversation with your partner that says, you know what, like, here's what I'm experiencing. I understand that what it is you are trying to do is coming from a place of you wanting to protect me. Okay. That you have to believe, first of all, that your partner is well-intentioned. If he or she is trying to keep you from judgment or ridicule or failure or embarrassment or whatever, that's well-intentioned. It's totally his crap, but it's still well-meaning, right? And so address that, acknowledge that. I know you mean well, but here's what it does to me. And here's how I would like to show up. And here's where I'm feeling this and this thing, right? More honest conversations and use more words. A lot of times we shortcut things. We say like, I'm mad. That doesn't really tell the other person anything. Like, use 10 times more words than you think you need to so that the person really understands what's going on for you.
Yeah. And even if you can't talk them into understanding either, but you can also say to them, if you've tried to have an honest conversation, you can also say, okay, so here's where I need to kind of put up a boundary and a line for myself and say, your issues about the way that I behave are your issues.
Right.
I am uniquely me. I am quirky and goofy and fun, and people, I'm going to be who I am. So I would appreciate if you would keep your opinion about me to yourself.
Yep.
That's going to put the ball back in their court to deal with them, with their issues. Their issues are not your problem.
Right.
Their business is not your business. So, all right, last question, because I love Veronica. She's a grower, and I just want to make sure we help her here. She says, I'm triggered extremely when my husband tries to tell me how to drive. We've argued about it. We've talked round and round. It's not about the driving. He is just a step or two ahead of me. So he sees that I will need to be turning, get in a different lane. It drives me crazy. Okay. Yeah, it drives me crazy. I do believe he's trying to help me, but I feel like I'm going nuts. Okay. It's not about the driving.
No, it's not. There's some kind of control dynamic at play here, right?
Yep.
Where your husband has learned that he can control, in air quotes, what it is you're doing, and you've allowed that, right? And so I'll say, I'll put the spin on it. We were reversed. So I would do the same thing to my husband. And what helped me is I would literally cover my eyes when we would drive. Because as long as I couldn't see what he was doing, then oh my God, we got there in one piece.
Yes.
Take 4 times longer than I think it should have. And he must be a competent driver, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that you can necessarily suggest that to your partner, but recognize that there is some place where you have allowed him to think that it's okay for him to tell you how things need to be done. A good question to ask may just be like, are you concerned about something happening if I don't change lanes? Like, what are you worried about? What's scary about me not being in the right lane? Right. And it's a very like innocuous question, and he'll probably be like, what the heck? I'm not scared of anything, right? And blow it off. But if you ask that a few times and you kind of spin it back to like, you know what? This is kind of your thing in a non-defensive way, where you're genuinely curious about like, hey, what's making you do this? Then it may get him to be a little bit more introspective about like what it is that's making him try to manipulate the situation.
Yeah. And, honestly, I mean, as a person who I don't ride well either. I like to be in control. I read. Well, I used to read. Now I'm getting divorced, but I used to read when we would travel, or I'd work on my computer. But one of the things that might be beneficial, I would feel out of control if I was watching. I like to be in control, so when I watch him drive, I felt out of control. Yep. Maybe your husband feels out of control, and one way to give him control if you're driving is to ask him what it could be. What can I do to make you feel better while I'm in the driver's seat?
Yes.
Better yet, if here's the keys, if you want to drive. I mean, I know, and this might seem small to some people. It's not business related, but it all bleeds into your
all business. The same.
It all relates to itself. It does. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this cannot be our last webinar. We got to get back on again.
I would love
to. So talk to us. Do you have anything you want to tell us about? What do you do? What services do you offer to people to help them overcome mindset? Where can we find you so I can type it into the box and put it out with the replay?
Yeah. So right now I am in the middle of launching a course called Prep Work. The intention of that course is to help you do the mental prep work that you need to do before your head will allow you to implement strategy. It's really intended for people who are stuck, have been at a plateau for a while, and know that the plateau is mentally originated, right? Mm-hmm. And so the things that we're talking about here, I break that down into 6 shifts that every entrepreneur needs to make at some point. And I walk you through like very simple but really effective exercises to help you make those shifts. There's monthly coaching with me included that's very much like this. I do it in a Zoom room so that I can talk directly with people. And, somebody asked a question last night based on one of the modules, and within an hour she had an answer from me that was, a few hundred words. Like I'm really invested in the success of people who go through that course, but I've just seen how important it is for people to tackle this headspace piece of it first, especially if you've been feeling like you're banging your head against the wall for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I've just got a message here from my team. So we've got the link for that. And what I'm going to do, you guys, so I make sure I'm getting the right link to you guys for Prep Work. I'm going to put it in the replay. I'm also going to post it in every group. So it'll be in Clarity. If you came to me from Clarity, it will be in the mentorship group, and it'll be in the student group, and also on my business pages. So we're going to have this spread out on 5 different places. And we're also going to throw it in the email for the replay as well, you guys. So just be patient. Once I convert the video into YouTube, all of this will come to you guys in one place. But man, we need to do this again. We got to do this again. I'm serious. I think we should try to maybe have some deep discussions around maybe a focused topic. So I will get with you and let's maybe narrow it down a little bit. I'll do a little polling and see what we can do to help people even move further ahead.
Awesome.
You're amazing. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Thanks for having me.
Great conversation.
No, I appreciate you guys' openness and honesty and vulnerability. Like that's tough, especially just like to a random lady in a chat box. So kudos to you guys for your willingness to talk, and thanks for being here. Yeah.
And by the way, that's the first part of the mindset thing, is being willing to see that there might be something to change, and talking about it is really powerful. So, all right, everybody. Thanks so much. And thanks again. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.